Hello to everybody and welcome to today's webinar on Contract Lifecycle Management. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Laura Mason and I'm joined by my colleague Rafi Siegel. And before we get into the details of today's session, just to let you know, the webinar is being recorded and you can get a copy afterwards, or if you missed it, you can also get a copy. We'll spend about 45 minutes talking through Contract Lifecycle Management and how AI-powered solutions, our solution, can streamline the process. Please ask any questions as we go through today's session. We'd love to hear from you. Pop them in the chat in the Zoom. And if we don't answer them during the session, we'll definitely have time towards the end of the session to answer them. So we hope you'll find the topic interesting today and full of opportunity as we do. But let's start by introducing ourselves. So I'm Laura Mason. I wear a number of hats and have a long background in corporate Australia, having worked at Telstra for 25 years and worked with many large corporates and small and medium businesses. And more recently, I've joined Contract Corridor in the APAC region and bringing this new technology and new way of managing contracts into this part of the world. So I'll pass over to my colleague Rafi to introduce himself.
Good day. Morning, Laura. Thank you to everyone who's joined. My name is Rafael Siegel. I am the co-founder of the solution Contract Corridor. We have been developing this over the last 5 years, really focused on pre-signature and post-signature solutions to enable corporates to manage contracts. The focus really is on turning contract promises into business value. And so it's all things contracts and AI. So that's my life the last 5 years. Before that, I ran a business called Legal Interact, adjacent to managing contracts, a business focused on serving law firms, practice management, time and billing, and then have been involved in another business around CRM, sales CRM for motor dealerships. So always been in tech, always been solving problems, and really excited to be on a call with Laura and the team talking through contract lifecycle management.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rafi. And maybe the place to start will be around what's a problem that we think there is to be solved. I'll perhaps, let me just get to the next slide, ask you, Rafi, to talk some more about the problem.
Perfect. So when we think about the problems to be solved, we think of the areas around, revenue leakage, areas where you've missed your contract renewals, you've missed the opportunity to get the benefit of obligations that you've negotiated in contracts. We talk about the lack of visibility, not being able to see all your contracts in a central point. We talk about the manual inefficiencies in terms of, using templates to draft, then save as, then getting it down the line to other people to negotiate and work on. Often seeing small problems creep in because someone's using an old template that doesn't have the latest clauses or has incorrect name in it. And I think we've all done it and all seen it. And then in doing that, you definitely undermine the compliance requirements of the contract because you're not sure if you've got the latest one. Then you have this negotiation that's a protracted negotiation. Everyone's got these documents that are being mailed up and down, their Word document that they're mailed up and down. You lose any of the version history. And once it's signed, just the inability to see the renewals, manage those renewals, and because contracts are stored in single departments, they're not really central to the business at large. Each time you're negotiating a contract, it's kind of begin again, and each department has to take the contract or the latest contract they've got, and so the siloed departments make it, with lack of sight into contracts, makes these siloed departments continue to just build around the problem. And so for us, that's a material challenge that we focus on.
And Rafi, if I put the hat on of a CEO or a CFO in any of the businesses that we talk to. Probably the two of many things that keep them awake at night are, what don't I know, and what am I at risk of? And you touched on these, what don't I know? What do I know if my team have actioned the renewal? Do I know what my compliance obligations are, and am I meeting them? And I think those, out of all these business problems to be solved, are a couple that are on the tips of the tongues of many people that I talk to. And if I just jump to a story of a retailer that I met with not that long ago. I was talking to the CFO of a large retail chain, and he said to me that they have all their contracts in their desk drawers, not literally, well, they probably do, but they have them on a spreadsheet. And in fact, the spreadsheet, every year they put out the spreadsheet to say, can everybody please update the spreadsheet, because not too sure what additional contracts have come in over the last year. And they literally are running a large retail chain on spreadsheets. So yes, manual tracking, yes, who knows where the contracts are. But of course, when people leave, that IP leaves with them, and the contract knowledge and the reasons behind some things are definitely lost. But what kept the CFO awake at night was not having visibility of whether, as I said a moment ago, their teams were actioning the things that needed to be actioned. And he told me the story of one of their retail stores had a lease in one premises, and they hadn't actioned the renewal clause, and the lease expired, and the landlord refused to renew the lease, and they had to move their huge retail store to another premises. I think, if you remember, Raf, he said it cost them about $1 million to relocate the store. And if he had known that there was some way to track and keep a much more automated eye on all the moving parts in their business, he would have slept better at night. So a real case study, a real story of wasted money, wasted effort, business downtime, lost revenue, and this CFO rather, was absolutely convinced that they needed some sort of systematized way of not just storing their contracts, but also tracking all the things that need to be done against contracts that we have. So let's talk a bit more about contract lifecycle management, because there's a start and the end of this life cycle, and it's a big circle. But Raf, I'll pass to you to take us through what is contract lifecycle management.
Brilliant. And that story really resonates, because we see it all the time. And I think we've got, as you shared that story, we've got so many of those examples. So contract lifecycle management is really the process of managing contracts from creation through execution, the performance and renewal or expiration of that contract. It really is about ensuring that, you're encompassing every stage, from drafting to negotiating to collaborating to ensuring you're compliant in how you track that contract once it's been signed, and you go through the process of renewal or termination, and then deciding whether that contract will continue to perform over time until it is no longer performing, and then archiving the contract. And when you think about the systems that you really need to have in place need to focus on ensuring that, you're able to generate and negotiate contracts at speed, so that you can get to work really quickly, that you've taken care of the areas around compliance and risk, so that even though it's a new contract, you're not a begin again each time, that your ability to collaborate online, real time, make sure that, all the change controls that need to be in place for tracking changes of these contracts is in place, and that you can leverage the benefits that you spent all that time negotiating, so that, you're empowered to save costs in having these contracts perform. And I think all of that put together, when you make it work in a tool set that is understood by people. You're not giving them different tools. They don't have this anxiety that I now have to negotiate my documents in a tool that isn't Word and it's flowing through Outlook. Just brings together, a safe place to negotiate these contracts, and consequently work on building a stronger relationship with your partners as they work through the contract.
Perhaps, Raf, if you want to keep going, we'll talk about the two parts to contract lifecycle management, kind of the pre-signature before a document is signed and sealed, and then we'll come to post-signature. So perhaps I'll pass back to you.
Perfect. So, I mean, we really spent a lot of time just working out, how do we bring this to market? How does Contract Corridor, what's the offering? And so you've got two modules, and you can kind of look at each module separately. The first module really is built on, a pillar of three areas. So when we think about self-service or pre-signature, it's made up of the first part, self-service enablement, in allowing the business to come in and draft an NDA with a template that has been approved, or an MOU or an SLA through the self-service portal, being able to then send that on to a third party, so that they can negotiate online real time, and being able to manage all of those collaboration features as they work through the contract, and then getting it to a point where it can be signed. And once it's signed, you can then surface that into the post-signature solution. And you can see that we've kind of broken it up into 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, which is all around the drafting of contracts. 3, just how do we get it to the third party that we need to collaborate and negotiate on. And 4 and 5 is just being able to get that document or contract signed, so that actually the contract can become effective, and we can start the process of the work that we've engaged the party to do. And so for us, that's pre-signature. It's going all the way from the initiation of the idea all the way to actually getting that contract signed.
So, Raf, before we move on to the post-signature, of course, all these contracts that are negotiated through this mechanism, through to finalise and countersigned, then go into a repository. But of course, businesses don't start fresh. Everybody's got hundreds and thousands of contracts already. So let's talk about the flow on of these contracts, but also those that then have been sitting around, excuse me, in spreadsheets or wherever for years. So let's talk through the post-signature side of things too.
And so that is exactly why we built two modules, pre-signature and post-signature. When we come into organizations, what we've seen is that they have tons and tons of contracts, and those contracts are literally sitting in OneDrive or their G Drive or the email. And so the idea is to try and get all those contracts centralized, and then have at scale this ability to ingest all those contracts. We'll talk a little bit about AI, but the ability to ingest those contracts, extract all the relevant, pertinent in fields and clauses. For all clauses, we have a set of insights that explain to you what's going on in the clause, what the purpose of that clause is, and you can then set the baseline of how you want clauses to be evaluated, to show you that if you're looking for a force majeure clause, if you're looking for a limitation of liability clause, it will tell you that it is there, and that it matches your playbook or required information in terms of how you want to manage the obligations. The ability to handle events. You have a catastrophic storm. You want to be able to work out, which stores are in that area where we had a storm, and then create an event for a insurance claim. So that's all built into Contract Manager, which is a module of Contract Corridor. And sitting on top of it is a dashboard and reporting tool, so that you're able to drill into contracts by business unit, contracts by expiry, those expiring in the next 90 days, 120 days, and there's all kinds of reporting that one could get. The premise for us on the post signature was post signature with ingestion, and we'll talk a little bit about the ingestion just now, but essentially post signature informs pre signature because those are the contracts that have been accepted into the business. So we'll learn a lot more about what the business accepts, what clauses are important to it, how it actually handles those obligations. So when you talk about pre-signature, it really is for us the other side of the same coin of post-signature. For us, from a post-signature perspective, we think that's where we can really bring value to the organization through the ingestion and value extraction process, all sitting on a safe and secure platform. And as a consequence, we've got the data out. We can really help businesses manage the obligations, both operational obligations or financial obligations, incumbent on either the supplier, the third party, or on themselves to perform. And so that workflow is really what the focus of Contract Corridor is designed to do, enabling easy collaboration for all the parties involved in contract delivery.
Sorry, Raf, I didn't mean to interrupt. So we see some companies have really small legal teams, some have hardly any, and they outsource their legal work, and then others have, very large teams. I think we've seen where it's really valuable for organizations to have this core repository of what you were saying, might say your favorite clauses, terms and conditions, the things that you will accept as a company, from which a lot of the drafting can be done. Now, it doesn't say it replaces the lawyers, because we still need lawyers to give some thought to the ultimate contract, but it can really speed up the creation of the contract on the pre-signature side. But then on the post-signature side, we spend like 80% of the time negotiating a contract, and then we kind of forget about it. But this is where the real work happens, isn't it? This is the execution of the contract, and where you really want to draw the value out of all that hard work in negotiating. So that post-signature side for me, like my eyes light up, because yes, there's efficiencies and wonderful smarter ways of drafting and sharing and collaborating and approving contracts. And then you've got this asset, this database, this repository of all your contracts that you can interrogate. Is that the sum of both parts?
That is, you've said it really well, and I think that is, that's where the real value case lies, in driving forward these obligations embedded in your signed contracts. And I think, and just having it easily available, that the obligations are transparent, they're long lasting, so they're not sitting in someone's drawer. And all parties who have these obligations can become part of the process of delivering against that obligation.
Absolutely. So AI is obviously something hot on everybody's tongues at the moment. Do you want to talk to the audience a bit about how this is really AI driven?
Absolutely. So when we thought about how AI should fit into it, the premise was AI assists and humans authorize. And so the real focus here was just working out, when there's AI for AI's sake, but the ring around both the pre-signature and post-signature is what is the AI wrapper that sits across our product. And we really focused on AI from a perspective of productivity improvements, customer experience, content creation, or process automation. That's where we found AI is really useful when we are talking about contracts. So if we talk about looking at contracts that have been signed, those contracts that you spoke about that have been signed, they're sitting in an organization's drawers, the ability to handle these contracts en masse, ingest them, classify them, run a field and clause extraction process, being able to summarize them, being able to evaluate them against the contract rulebook. All of that really makes our ability to ingest contracts at scale so much easier. So the engine at the moment, when we talk about this ability to classify, these are signed contracts, classify, extract fields, summarize, run the process of review, we're able to handle up to 5,000 contracts in 24 hours, all sitting on the secure repository. And I know we'll talk a little bit about that, but essentially that's a core part of the function. Then if we talk about, just the concept of getting a third party contract, the ability to actually run a contract review against it, being able to identify or classify the contract, extract the fields, run your standard FAQs against that document, evaluate it against your playbook risks, all really focused on giving you that first draft review of your contract in real time. We create a chatbot so you could chat to your contract. You could speak to your contract using the speech to text mechanisms. If there's translation, if you have contracts in French or German, you can use AI to help you translate. And as these contracts come in, the more we know about the contracts, the bigger and better the repository comes, because you have this ability to find information, not where you used to say, I'm looking for a clause that allows me to move from premises, but you could actually talk about relocation. And semantically, we can understand what is meant by that request. So the ability to search documents, compare one contract against another, either for changes or for benefits accrued in one contract versus benefits in others. So this ability to do contract comparison. And then obviously, if you wanted to expose the actual contract to your external customer, we have a question and answer environment where your customers can access the solution and ask questions of the contracts as well. On the right hand side, I just want to delve in there for a minute. We have 16 categories of contracts. We have 144 contract types, where we've actually worked on extracting fields for those contract types, clauses for those contract types. For each clause, we have an overlay of insights, and then we have a risk framework that will evaluate a contract that sits in each category. So in that risk framework, financial risk, operational risk, reputational risk, and each contract type brings with its own risk framework, which is a dictionary that one can keep adding to as you evaluate your contracts.
And that goes back to my point earlier about the CEO or the CFO who's sitting with that risk management hat, or chief risk officer who's sitting with that risk management hat on, thinking, what's my risk appetite, and how do I assess that against those contracts? Maybe let's take a little look at what this actually looks like, because obviously all we've said now is PowerPoint slides and words, and let's have a look at the actual system. So I'll just lower my screen so that I can see this very well. So what's on the screen here is the dashboard of the post-signature. So I'll just stick with where Rafi just finished up there on post-signature. And this shows all the contracts that have been ingested. This company has a whole lot that have been ingested. You can see the type, service level, lease agreements, non-disclosures, supply agreements, IT services agreements, and so on. And what you can see on the dashboard is the contracts by type, of course, their status, but on the right you'll see business units. You'll also see important things like contract expiry and renewal, which we know is key to everybody, on everybody's minds. So other than seeing that, we can also click onto a particular part of any of these pie charts. And in this case, we've clicked on the lease agreement type, and it's showing there are 7 lease agreements in this company. And once you've clicked on that, you get to see the 7 agreements. So if I just pause there, sorry, I think I just went backwards, apologies. Give me 1 second, I'll get back to where I was. There are the 7 agreements, and when we click into those, we will then see those 7 agreements pop up. With those 7 agreements, you can see across the headers there, each one has its distinct number. It's got the name of the agreement, the category, the department, the business unit, and also what kind of renewal arrangements, whether it can renew or can't renew. You can click on one of these contracts and you get to see 2 displays. On the left-hand side, you see the actual agreement, which would be familiar to all of our listeners and watchers because you can see that's a typical looking agreement. And on the right-hand side of the screen are the fields and clauses that Rafi just spoke about that the AI would extract. So let me just click now on expiry and renewals. And I've gone back on the top there of the screen because we can dig deeper into what kind of expiry conditions exist for our contracts. We've got 2 that are evergreen. We've got a few on the right there that have upcoming expirations in December and some in March. And we can scroll down and see different kind of renewal and expiry statuses, those that can renew, those that renew automatically, those not expiring. We can click on any of the blue bars and you get the list of contracts associated with that blue bar. Let's go up again and click on tasks because remember we spoke about there's a whole bunch of tasks that we need to remember to do so that we see the task by category, by contract type, by the department, business unit. Really important here is somebody has to do something. Somebody has to take action in the next day, the next 7 days, in the next 30 days, 90 days. And those actions could save you money or bring in some money. And you're able to set whatever rules around those tasks that you wish for. You can see the list of tasks again when you click on any particular blue bar. If we then go up to the user actions, there are people that need to take action when contracts are ingested. Let's be honest, not all our contracts are in perfect shape, and there might be a reason why there's no signatories or there's no dates, and there's some actions as we're configuring the contracts. I want to talk a bit about chatting, though, with any of the contracts, because Rafi, you spoke about the ability to interrogate the contracts. And here we pick a particular contract and we want to ask it some questions. So as a reminder, on the left of the screen, you see the actual contract. On the right, you see the fields and clauses that the AI's extracted. And we have the ability to do an AI chat with the contract. So here we're going to click on AI chat. We're going to create a new chat and we're going to ask it just something in very simple English. Let's say we say, was there storm damage to the premises and what do I have to do as a result of that? Or what are the terms of the force majeure? What you'll see is the query returns 2 things. It returns for us on the left-hand side the actual clause in the contract, and on the right-hand side a summary of what it's found. And of course, it may find, as contracts have clauses and different things in many places, it may find the clauses in multiple places. So here it's given us a summary, notify within 5 days, and it's also showing us where in the contract it found those clauses or where it got its summary from. So that's just a very short view on the actual system, a bit about the dashboard, a bit about the query. But let's go to a real live example, Raf. You're a bit closer to this one than I am. Sasfin Bank, which for Australian New Zealanders is more like an ANZ or Westpac Bank. Do you want to tell us a bit about what they did and what they found?
Yeah, so when we started to look at the contracts and how to ingest them and where they were placed, what we discovered is that the documents were in SharePoint, in different folders. They had some were countersigned. Some contracts had the negotiation documents as part of the contracts. Some were missing pages. Some weren't fully signed, and so it was that whole audit that needed to be done. So when you start this ingestion process, it's great when it's sitting in SharePoint. You've got the contract and you can go and look at it, but you actually cannot get to, what are the renewal dates? What are the requirements in terms of price increases? What are the obligations around delivery of services? And so we started to look at these contracts and work out, well, how do we ingest them at scale? Because, if we're going to take 20,000 contracts of 40, 50 pages, it's just a ton of pages to go through and perform some form of contract audit. The idea was take the 20,000 contracts, run them through our AI engine. Through the AI engine, we were able to identify, is the contract fully formed? Are we missing pages? Has everything been signed? Is there parts of that contract that we call associated documents? They're not really part of the contract per se, so they needed to be taken out and made part of the collateral around contracts. But the engine itself will ingest contracts, 5,000 contracts in 24 hours, which meant once we'd performed the pre-ingestion process, cleaning up the contracts, understanding what we had, the actual ingestion of contracts was relatively easy. It was 2-3 days, and we had all the contracts in. So you could now see the contracts just as you had shown, Laura, with the dashboards. Contracts by type, contracts by department, contracts by supplier or third party. We were able to see which contracts were evergreen, which contracts had an auto renew. So we were able to get to that information relatively easily. This was done, and it's probably not so impressive right now. We're 18 months from ground zero of AI, but it was done about 18 months ago. Yeah, about 18 months ago. And both Microsoft and Sasfin obviously supported the initiative, and the voice of customer, the story is available on the Microsoft website. So if you hover over the QR code, you can get to that story, which was supported by Microsoft. It really for us was this massive clarification of how we could ingest contracts, sign contracts at scale, bring them into the repository so that the business could actually start to get value from these contracts that were negotiated. It wasn't just sitting in some repository as a storage repository, but it really became a central source of truth with, I would call it a smart repository.
Fantastic. Let's go straight on to security and privacy and safety and so on. And Raf, while you're talking through this slide, perhaps I've just noticed some of the questions that are in the chat, and there's a question: is the AI chat secure? So I think that's a great lead into this. Take us through how secure is all of this, including is the AI chat secure?
Great. So I'll start at the key point is that all of the contract data is stored on Microsoft Azure. So it's an Azure only platform. Your data is resident in the country that you're operating in. So from a sovereignty point of view, your data is not moving around. All data is encrypted, both at rest and in transit. The platform is secure in terms of two-factor authentication. All of the wrappers from a security point of view are around that contract data, and the third-party portals and the access to the solution. The business itself is ISO 27001 compliant, and so we were really excited about that. We're SOC 2 compliant, and we're GDPR compliant. So we're very aware that we have to be fully versed on all the securities that are required to be able to work in this contract place, and we understand that fundamentally putting your contracts into a repository is a massive decision, and we take that obligation as a very, very serious and important obligation to protect our customers' data in every which way we can. So when we talk about chat, the actual chat itself is secure because that's all encrypted, going from your front end to the actual contract, that's encrypted. But also the data that sits on the infrastructure is encrypted in as we communicate to the data, to the vectors are encrypted, the data in the database is encrypted. So it's kind of really safeguarded with the best infrastructure and tools that are available at this, I can say, at this time.
Absolutely. And I guess I'm guessing where the question often comes around is it secure? Is the AI chat secure? Because we all think of ChatGPT and our questions and answers are sitting in this big ether of accessible to everybody, whereas this is obviously, as you've described, very encrypted and secure.
Yeah, and just one thing, when we talk about the AI chat, it's actually going through Microsoft Azure AI. So it's not going into what we would say ChatGPT or one of these foundational models. It actually is on Azure. So it's the Azure AI, OpenAI engine that we're talking directly to.
Right.
And
And sorry, you go, right?
no problem. And they've given commitments to securing your data, not using it for any training, making sure it's encrypted. There's a copyright protection shield from them. So they've really gone a long distance to making sure that this contract data is secure when we're engaging with Azure AI.
And I was going to say, also on the slide, it says Contract Corridor is a Microsoft Gold partner and Legal Interact as the parent company. So that's obviously further evidence of the relationship we have with Microsoft, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty, maybe I'll bring this part to a close and then we'll address the remaining questions. But maybe the key messages that I think of when I look at contract lifecycle management really is around contracts are more than just a legal document and more than a thing that goes in a drawer on a spreadsheet. There's something quite strategic about driving the revenue or reducing the cost or reducing the risk that goes and is attached to contracts. And there's this huge opportunity that many organizations are missing in really managing their contracts. The second thing, from a pre-signature perspective, there's a much quicker way of drafting and sharing and negotiating contracts. And it's not just the typical digital platform to distribute documents with, but it's the speed at which the contract can be drafted, and then the security of it going through the negotiation, redlining, and approvals process. Then it lands in this awesome repository, which leads us to the post-signature, which is really where the real value is unlocked, to have this incredible visibility, the ability to be on top of your compliance obligations and be very clear on how your contracts are performing. Not missing a milestone. That's kind of the tagline for me on post-signature or contract management after the fact of signing it, is never missing a milestone, never incurring that $1 million relocation expense that CFO had because they missed renewing one lease. And then lastly, as Rafi's done a great job of explaining, really proven, safe, practical technology, Microsoft Gold partner, very, very strong on this, on respecting the importance and the value of our clients' contracts and making sure that it's as safe as all the obligations are across the globe, and the security and privacy obligations are. And giving you the ability to have a much better cross-team alignment and everybody working on the source of truth, the contract that's in the repository. So I guess the bottom line here is, why continue to manually waste time and be at risk of missing those milestones and other obligations? There is an alternative, and of course we'd love to talk some more with you about those. But let's move on and take some questions. There are some in the chat. Feel free to add some more. We have covered the AI chat one. Raf, in your experience, how long is a typical implementation process?
So technically we can stand up the pre-signature in about 5 weeks. That means getting the templates from the customer, converting those templates to have merge fields in them, and so that's one part of it. On the post-signature side, we can do it in about 2 weeks. The ability to bring, the toughest part is getting the contracts, but the ingestion of contracts, getting them into the system, using those to inform pre-signature. So it takes about 2 weeks, I would say, on post-signature, 5 weeks on pre-signature, and that's at like a technical environment. But I think it's the point above that's probably the that's the elephant in the room whenever we're doing an implementation, is how do we deal with the change that's needed to move people off these old processes.
So that I might take that question, and I think it comes to the age-old change management. The question we always pose is, what's in it for me? Why should I care? Why should I move to a different platform? Why should I take the dust off my contract and take it out of my drawer? And I guess how you ensure business users adopt it is by everybody using it and everybody holding people to account through the system, and the tracking and the accountability, holding the functionality is there in the system to be able to assign to different departments, different business units, different access for different business units. Of course, your HR business unit, you don't want your whole company to have access to what your HR business unit has access to, for example, if it was employment contracts. So you've got to be walking the talk as leaders by using the system to drive the business. But I think then there's also the other part of what's in it for me, which is what value do I get by using it? I either get more revenue or reduce my costs, or I'm more efficient. And so we tend to try and speak the language of the business user, of what's important to them and what are their big KPIs, and how can we help them with that. So how do we ensure that they actually adopt this? Well, they're going to be left behind if everybody's contracts are in this new platform and they're the only ones who are still managing theirs manually. If they manage it manually beautifully, so be it. But as an executive, whichever role you're in, whether you're in procurement, whether you're a CFO, a CEO, you want to have a dashboard and visibility of all the actions and all the tasks of your organization. And then there's the ability to obviously escalate if things aren't being done, and have visibility of that. So I think it's partly leadership, it's partly what's in it for me and the value for me and how much more I can get out of my contracts, which typically is revenue in or cost out. Did you want to add anything to that, Raf?
No, I think you've done a great job there.
Right. There's another question. How do you manage cross-functional alignment, like legal, procurement, sales, when they all have different priorities? I think I'll start, Raf, and then please add to it.
Okay.
I think the software and contract lifecycle management actually talks to lots of different divisions in an organization, talks to in the sense of gives opportunity and gives value to different departments. When I talk to a legal department or to lawyers, they love the idea of being able to very speedily draft their contracts and negotiate, but they also love the idea of somebody's keeping an eye on the obligations after it's all been signed, and somebody's keeping an eye on what has to be done and how to maintain compliance. So that's often their priorities. The procurement folk, very often, yes, they want the contract signed, but they want to hold you to account to the things that you had to do. So they have this great ability to see the obligations that their suppliers have. And then the sales teams, very often, I'm finding, Raf, and I'm curious to know what you've experienced with salespeople. They need to have a sense of what their customers are expecting of them, and be sure that that's delivered. Because even though salespeople often wash their hands and leave it to the people who are delivering, it's hard to get the next sale if you haven't
Yeah.
executed well on the previous. What are your thoughts on this one, Ray?
So I think that, one of the things about these cross-functional departments, and that's what makes it so hard about contracts, is that they're negotiated negotiated by one party, brought into life because a different party needs them, and then operationalized by a third party. And so what you really need is to work hard on that alignment. And the best way that alignment can work is through transparency, shared data, shared incentives. And so it's critical to get the workflow, rules, and risks all running in the same direction, so that the team itself can get running in the same direction, because their priorities will differ. So I think that that's where we've seen the software really come to its own. Everyone's always saying, but I asked for, the person who needs the request says, I've asked for the request. And that's possibly then gone into commercials to work out the commercials, or it's gone to legal, but no one ever seems to get the right information in the right time. So I think that's where this software comes to play. I think the world we're moving to needs a unified operating model. Um, I think that these old days of being able to take a contract manually from Word to Outlook to multiple people to then delegations to then negotiating to then actually getting it realigned, then sending it out, getting it um, signed, just is it's not connected to the way the world is working. The world is working in hyper pace, so you need to be absolutely certain that the way in which you draft contracts, distribute them, negotiate them, and then operationalize can be done at scale. And because we're moving to this world of AI enablement, just where you've got to close deals faster with less risk and full compliance. I think software like this, and sales just want to get these deals signed. So everyone's incentivized in a bit of a different way, and I think you really want to focus on automating the tension out of this process. And so that's we've seen that when it actually helps create harmony, because it creates clarity about who needs to do what to actually get these contracts both signed, operationalized, and make sure that they're performing.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Let me just check if there are any further questions. I think those are all the questions that we've had. Of course, you know where to find us after today's webinar. If you have other questions, feel free to email through or give us a call. You'll find us on the website. Rafi, thank you for joining me to share kind of the 101 of contract lifecycle management, but also what kind of solution we have for all those problems. And thank you to everybody for joining us today, and we look forward to being in touch soon. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Laura. Thank you. Bye, guys.